Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name's Evan. I'm the artist and owner of Midian Gallery, and you can see more of my work at midiangallery.com.
Today we're doing Country Road Barn.
Our materials, we're using acrylic paint. I'm just keeping it simple. I have black, white, the primary colors. Then for brushes I have a large flat, a small round brush, a pencil, and a piece of chalk. You got your rag, towel, cup of water, and we're ready to go. I'm going to start out using the large flat brush. Make sure you wet that and dry it off before you start. So first I'm going to be making some light blue, like a sky blue, a little bit of white and that dark blue that we have. And then I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of black. You see how small that is, just a little drop. So all this light blue has a little bit of a grayish tint to it, just to mute the color a little bit. So when I have that done, I'm going to take my brush, hold it flatways, and go all the way across. Just a few inches from the bottom of the canvas. Alright, so once I do that, up here is the sky, that's the ground, just so you know what you're working with. Then I'm going to take some of that light blue. Remember, it has just a touch of black in it. It's easy to get that too dark, so if you think it's too dark, just try again, rinse off your brush, and try to mix it again with a real small amount of black paint with that. I'm going to be adding more dark blue to the mix. The more I go up, the darker I'm going to get, but you want to make sure that you don't get too dark too fast. You want to make sure that you stretch this blue out just a little bit longer. But as I go up, I'm adding a little bit more of the dark blue and a touch of black every time. Once in a while you can go back down a little bit just to blend it if you need to. And now I'm getting less of the white paint mixed in, and it's starting to look just more of the dark blue and that touch of black all by itself. Still have a little bit of white mixed in with it. So if you're not painting, or if you just started painting and you're not used to this, you want to make sure that you have a good amount of paint on the brush. If the brush is doing this kind of thing, you want to get more paint in the brush. You don't want to add too much either, because you don't want to layer this on too thick. We want this to dry pretty quickly. It's acrylic, so this thin layer will do just fine for the painting, and it doesn't take long to dry. I'm getting towards the top here, and this is going to be the darkest part of the sky, so I'm finally going to finish this up with a little bit of black and blue mixed together. I don't have any white in the brush, take that all the way to the top. Alright, and that's the first step of our sky. I'm still using the big flat brush here. Rinse that off. And I'm going to be working on the road down at the bottom. And for this one, we're going to mix some gray, kind of a darker gray, so you can have a little more black in that. And once you got that going, you can just start at the bottom here. Make sure you get right up to the edge. In fact, I'm going to go over the blue just a little bit. If it starts mixing a lot, just wait until that dries more if it hasn't already. This is a smaller canvas. I think it's 11 by 14. So it's pretty easy to cover with this large flat brush. Now you got the road. I'm going to rinse off my brush again. This time you want to take the pencil. We're going to add the stars in up top. It's an easy way to do this. You take the pencil, tap it in the white paint, and then just start dotting your stars in here. Just make sure that they're random. Don't try and make a perfectly straight row or anything like that. Just a few dots all around. The pencil doesn't hold that much paint, so you're going to have to tap it back in the paint every 3 or 4 stars. And what I like to do is just make sure you have some that are close together and then make a few farther apart. And don't be afraid to get near the edge. You don't want it to look like all these stars crowded in the middle for your painting. That wouldn't happen. And that should do it. Alright, next up we're going to do the clouds in the background. You want to make sure that you leave plenty of room for the barn, so we'll do them up here. If you end up overlapping the clouds with the barn, it's not a huge deal. It's highly possible in real life. So I switched over to a small round brush for this. And I'm going to start off with just black paint at first. And I'm going to outline the clouds first. So the shape of the clouds in this one, I'm going to start off on the left side of the canvas here. And just do a fluffy type of cloud at the top. It's going to come back down and get real narrow near the end of it. Just kind of fade out over here. So that's the top of the cloud. For the bottom of the cloud, I'm going to go ahead and just grab some of my light blue mixed with the black. So something along those lines, and you can paint the bottom of that cloud. I'll add a little bit more white so that you can see that better. So the bottom of the cloud is going to get the highlight. It's after the sunset, sun's down here, light is pointing towards the bottom of the cloud, so we're going to highlight this bottom edge here. Once you get that down, you can go back to just the black on top of that. It'll mix with the blue at first. And then most of this cloud near the top, that's going to be all black paint. And when you get to the top, you want to make sure it's all black so it stands out against that background. It's all pretty dark up here, But you can tell when it's just black all by itself, there's a big difference between that and our dark blue background. This little brush takes a little longer to fill this in, so if you're in a hurry, you can do the easy part up here with the big brush. And there we go, we got the first cloud. I'm going to do one more cloud over here. You don't have to if you don't want to, or you can add more, whatever you want. Doesn't have to be exactly the same as what I'm doing here. So fluffy top just like before. Bottom of that cloud and back into the black towards the top. Alright, take a good look at your cloud if you want to. You can always come back here and mess with this a little bit if you need to blend that highlight a little bit more. You can mess around with that until it looks right. Alright. Next I'm going to chalk in the barn. You can freehand this, or if you want you can just print out an image of a barn and cut that out and use that for a stencil. I'm going to put mine top of the roof right up here, just under the cloud. So the first part of the roof, we're doing the front of the barn, and then we'll do the side of it in just a second. But you have this little part of the roof here that looks like your basic roof, and then it dips down on either side. Like so, and just straight down vertical lines. Lines are tricky, and whenever you're doing vertical lines, it always helps to look at the side of the canvas and kind of match that up, make sure it's parallel, and that'll help you out. Same thing with horizontal lines, just look at the top and bottom of the canvas and do your best to match it up. So I'll do the top of the roof here, and just because of the angle it's going to be a little diagonal. Then you just have to try to match up these angles with what you had before. And there we go, there's the barn. They're all going to be different. Good thing about chalk is it's temporary. If you need to erase any of it, you can just kind of wipe it away. I'm not going to worry about any doors or windows right now. That's going to go on after the paint. Alright, next I'm going to go back to my big flat brush here, and I'm going to be painting in the side, the wall. and the roof over here. So they're pretty big areas with not a lot of detail. If you want, you can still stick with that smaller brush to do that, but I'm going to use the big one. For the roof, we're going to go with the gray. You can make it a little bit darker gray than we did for the road, so just add a little bit more black with that. I'll do the top first. I like the flat brush because you can use that flat side to get a pretty straight line once you get the hang of that. And then keep in mind, any chalk remaining, you don't want to try and wipe it away when there's wet paint around because you might smear the paint. So just wait until all of this is dry, like wait a couple hours just to be safe. And then you can take a damp paper towel and just kind of wipe away any chalk that you see after that you don't need. Alright, so there is the roof. For the side of the wall here, we're going to do dark red. So we're going to add a dab of black to some of our red here. It's going to be pretty dark, but if it looks just black all on its own, just make sure that you add enough red to that. You don't want it to be too dark. And I'm just going to fill that in. Also, it helps to paint in the direction of whatever you're painting, so you know, maybe these boards are going across. If you notice that, whatever, if you're painting a real barn from real life and the boards are going up and down, then go ahead and do that with your brush too. But that goes for just about everything. You know, grass, up and down. Just make sure that you follow whatever you're painting with your brush. If you want to add a little more texture there, you can flip in a little more black to the mix and just kind of flip that in along the sides and random spots throughout. That gives it more of a wood grain effect to it. And then finally I'll add a little bit of just a black shadow right under where the roof meets up with this wall. Alright, there we go. And finally, if you want to add some texture to the roof too, you can do that, even if this is still wet. Okay, so I'm going back to the small round brush. I rinsed this off, make sure you rinse it out. And we're going to go with that little bit of white. And then you're going to mix some yellow. And finally just a touch of red. That's going to give you a real light orange. We're going to do the light in the front of the barn here. This part is a little bit tricky, only because there is a lot of blending going on in a small area of the canvas, but there's a few tricks to it, and you'll get the hang of it. So we have, we'll do the circle. You can either do it right in the middle, or I'm going to do it off to the side a little bit, towards the right. And the reason we have white paint mixed in here is so it covers the background. So if you can see through it, just add more white paint to that orange. And every time I go around the circle, I'm going to add a little bit more of the red and the yellow. A little more orange on there. And if you can see the background too much, you can always come back and add a second coat of paint on here. Another way to do this is if you just left this part of the canvas white. It would be a lot easier to do this light part here, but sometimes it's just easier just to do the background like we did, and then worry about this later. You can always do a second layer on here and get it to where you want it. So I have this orange going on around here. I'm going to add even more of the red and yellow to that mix. And then finally I'm going to add a little touch of black to that orange. Throw in a little bit more red, and we're going to go for more of a brown. Might have an orange tint to it still, but it's going to be the darkest shade that we're using so far, and that's going to go on the outside of what where we left off with. Alright, so just around in a circle like that. And if you do a lot of these little paint dabs in here, that really helps out with the blending. And then finally I'm going to add even more black to it. More black and red. And still going on the outside of that circle. Right now you don't have to worry about going right up to that line of the barn, the outline. You can stop just before if you feel like you're going to go outside that line. You can always come back later and be a little bit more careful then and fill that in. Alright, for the rest of this I'm going to add even more black to it as I reach the outer edge of this shape. go over the roof just a little bit more with some black just to really bring that out against the background. And later on we'll be adding some highlights of the light bouncing off of certain areas of the barn. Now after this brighter part dries for just a little while, you can come back and go back to that brightest color that we used, the white, yellow, and red. And you can go over that one more time just to bring it out more. If you can see some of the background or you see a lot of paint strokes, you can just go right over that. Do the same thing you did before, and in this way you can blend it a little bit more too if you need to. Get that real bright orange in the middle and then darken it up near the outer edges. Another thing you could do now too is just if you have medium orange, you can just cover a lot of area with that. Even if you want to extend the light out just a little bit more, you can do that over that brown. But just take your time with it. If it does anything that you don't want, rinse out your brush and try again. And then finally we have the light there, and I'm going to add in the actual light bulb in there, and I'm going to do that with just some white paint by itself. And you can just do a dot right in the middle. There it goes. So there's the actual light, and then you have the glow from around it. Take a break from that for a minute and go over to the window on the side of the barn here. So you can rinse out your brush, same brush, small round brush, and I'm going to take some black all by itself and make yourself a little window here, just a rectangle. And then I'll fill that in all black. If you want to get really detailed with this, if you take a little bit of orange and then just add a little line on the inside there. Go over it a couple times. You don't want this too bright. It's just barely showing up, but that'll give more of a three-dimensional look to it if you want that. Otherwise, you can just leave it all black if you want to keep it simple. Alright, so while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to add a few more details on here, but I need that to be dry. In the meantime, I'm going to do some bushes and plant life around the barn here and in front of the road. So let's see, I'll just do, this is all in black by the way, so what you can do actually is just do a little bit of a black line towards the bottom here. You can even create a little shadow right towards the side of that wall. And then just make a bunch of little paint dabs. Make it look leafy. If you want, you can add a little fence in there. For that, I'll just do a little line. And this is facing down. little boards in there. There we go. I'll do some on the other side too. So I like to start out with just that line at the bottom first, that way you can keep it kind of straight. You don't have to worry about going over anything that you don't want to. Just be careful at first. Go right up along that barn, and then over here is just a free-for-all. You can do whatever with the leaves. And I'll keep it like that for now. Now for the leaves in the foreground, I'm going to switch over to the big brush. And first of all, I'm just going to fill in some space. So I got my basic shapes of the kind of little bushes here that I want. I'm going to have them go up a little bit higher on the sides to hide that road a little bit towards the edges. And then down here you can just have it kind of get lower and higher. But that gets done pretty quick with the big brush. And then all I have to do is go back to my small brush. And then do that same leaf dab technique. And that's a technical art term. Just do that all the way around. You can leave little holes in between them too if you want. Makes it look like you can see through the leaves a little bit. Alright. I'm going to go back to the front of the barn here and I'll add in the door. I'm just going to use black paint all by itself. There's going to be a big square, like double doors. Right towards the side there. I'm just going to outline it first, and then I'll fill that in with all black paint. And I'll do a little window right up here in the middle. Just a small rectangle. If you have a real tiny brush, some of these details are a lot easier with a smaller brush, but you can still get it done with this. Alright, so we have that. Okay, now I'm going to put this tree in here, and the tree is going to be done with a small round brush, black paint, and I'm going to start. I always start my trees at the top and work my way down, but you can do it either way. The main thing is you want it nice and thin or pointy at the very top, and then it gets a little bit thicker This tree is not straight either, so you don't have to worry about making a straight line. You want to make sure that once you get to the bottom, it starts to get thicker, and then the bottom of the trunk is going to be the thickest part. You can't really see the very bottom of this one, so it just kind of goes into the bushes, but you want to make sure that this is going to be the thickest part here because it has to hold up all the weight of the rest of the tree. So once I get that main trunk there, I'm going to split this off. I'm going to add another branch, keeping in mind that same rule where you want to start off at the tip of the branch is going to be real pointy and thin. When I'm doing this, I'm barely touching the canvas with the brush. And if you want to use a real small brush to help you out with that, you can. Once I get going with this, I'll just pick out a few more places to add branches. And also notice how the branches just kind of go and ease into whatever they're going to meet up with, the trunk or another branch. So you don't want any sharp 90-degree angles or anything like that. Just nice and smooth right into, down and into the trunk. So I'm saving this for last. This is when you want to make sure that you're confident in your branch making abilities, because this one is going to be right in the spotlight. Just like that. You can always get real close to the canvas. Be real careful, and you can get that real sharp tip of the other branches. So I'm going to add a few more little thin branches onto this one. Alright, so the rest I'm just going to start adding in real thin branches wherever it looks empty. You don't have to copy exactly what I'm doing by now, you just do your own tree. Okay, now more of these last little details with the orange. So I'm going to take some, just some yellow and a touch of red here. Make yourself some orange. And then right below that light, I'm going to add in a little bit of a reflection on top of the road. Maybe it's a little bit wet or whatever, but that's pretty much the only reflection you'll see. Just a dull one right under the light. You want to make sure that the light source it's directly under that, and it stays about the same all the way down. just a few little paint dabs of that light orange and do the trick. That'll add some texture to the road too. Another thing too, you want to add these little details in. The light is going to be hitting some side of the door frame here, so I'm going to add in some orange just on the side of that. Maybe I'll add in some over here. The side of the door frame is getting that. And then also up here, this window, you want to make sure that you add some just right at the top here to make that a little more three-dimensional. And then also the inside of the roof. Real light thin line. You want to make sure this orange isn't too bright. I don't have any white mixed in with it, but if you do, that might make it stand out a little too much. So make sure you're only using yellow and red. Also, when I'm doing this highlight, make sure you don't do it right along the edge. You want to leave some of that black line. And that way you get more of the shape of the barn in there too. Alright, we're almost done with this painting. I got a few more little details I want to finish up. So I have the small round brush, and I'm just going to add a little more texture to the road here. Remember, it's just that dark to medium gray, so I'm going to make sure that I have just a little bit darker gray than what I already have. And especially out here around the edges, you do a few more little shadows in here. You want to do dark gray, you don't want to do too much black, or it's going to cover too much and mix in with the leaves. So just make sure you try to get that as dark of gray as you can without making it just black and kind of blending everything else into it. Doesn't have to be super smooth, you know, it's a country road, so a little bit of texture is going to be more realistic. And you can leave it a little brighter once you get towards that light source. It can be, you can keep with that lighter gray. I'll go pretty dark gray over here and then just brush that in too. And then finally you can add some gray to the tree here. If you want to do gray with just a touch of blue mixed in with it to match the sky, you can do that. And I'm going to go real light and thin. Just pick a side of the tree. I'm going to do more of the left side of the tree trunk here. And then you don't have to do every single branch, but you can do some of the main ones. And when you're doing branches, generally you can do either one side of it, the branch that's facing the light, or you can just do it towards the top or bottom. I'm not trying to make any straight lines or anything, you're just doing a few highlights and adding some texture to the tree. Up here when it gets real dark, it kind of helps to have these highlights in there if you want to bring out some of these branches a little bit more. Or if you don't like your branches, just let them blend into the background. Alright, so I think that's it for this painting. If you want to add more details, or if you want to add something else into it, go for it. Don't forget to sign it. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I want to see your version of this painting, so you can leave a photo on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Midian Gallery, if you want to share what you came up with. Alright, see you next time.